I don't want him to be so specific about taxing the top 1% that they migrate and leave. And so I think that's a potential problem because the top 1% of income earners in New York bring in north of 30% of the revenue. I've seen anywhere from 34 to 44%.
Look, the labor market is the biggest industry in the world. That's about to be replaced by AI humanoids.
I'm not opposed to progress. I'm not opposed to AI or anything like that. I just am concerned about how the common everyday person is going to survive.
The problem, I think, is that too many of these left-leaning guys, and even some of these right-leaning guys now, they purposely make problems so that they have jobs.
Welcome to the Family Office, planning for the people who matter most.
All right, welcome back, everybody. It is July 28th, 2025. It's back here again with you as always, Chris and Len, and we're here with another edition or another free flow talk of Family Office Files. And we're happy to be with you guys today. We got a really amazing docket today. Len, I was waiting until we went live here today just to tell you a little selfishly that it is the 28th of July. It's my birthday today. So I was waited until we went live to be a little selfish with that. I hope you don't mind.
Happy birthday, brother.
Thank you. I snuck that one in there.
That didn't pop up on my feed today, man. So happy birthday. So is that 40, 46, 45?
No, you're 44.
44. Okay. Okay. So I am almost exactly 10 years older than you, though. So, okay.
You're trying to project your age on me right now.
Just like you did last week, man. Back at you. So happy birthday, man.
I appreciate that. So we have a full list of things today that we're gonna dive into. So I'm really, really excited about that. And going through that today, a lot of things have happened. A few things have happened, but I know last week we talked about some pretty interesting things. So anything new or exciting going on with you, Len, that you want to share before we dive into it? And then I could kind of maybe pick up from there outside of just the normal stuff. Anything new and exciting going on right now?
Are you talking about like in the current event news? Are you talking business? What are you
personal
thinking?
Business, anything, that you feel compelled that's under your heart right now that's new and exciting in your life that's going on that might be of value to somebody here today before we get into our topics. We want to talk about.
Yeah, one development that we're working on business wise is we're looking to form a partnership with the veterans. And so, you have so many people that go and fight for the country and then come back, and the types of services they have available to them sometimes are limited. And so one thing that we're looking to do is to provide services with certain entities that will pay us as a company. And then we'll do is send our people over to their homes. So our caregivers will provide services like 6 activities of daily living, light housekeeping. But instead of the veterans having to pay out of pocket, then the companies pay us to take care of that for them. So we're really excited about that partnership. And so we'll see what happens over time. So we'll definitely keep you posted.
That is exciting. I like that. In any time that you can do anything with veterans and anything like that, it's so key. It's so impactful. And that reminds me a lot of when in my former company that I did a few years ago, I worked with a lot of military veterans from all branches. And I could say that anything that you could provide to provide some type of value or work with them in any type of way, it provides, not saying everybody needs it, but there's a good amount of them that do need stuff like that or just need direction. So, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool. For me, I would think it's just the fact that I can't even believe it's the end of July already and we're going into August. And
crazy.
While I am excited that my kids are coming back home from summer vacation, at the same time, I don't feel like I got enough accomplished this summer, but I'm looking forward to a new school year with them. And the fact that my second oldest daughter now, she just graduated, she's 19 now. And I'm just really excited to see where she's going and what she's doing. And she's studying AI and learning that and getting into that. So I'm really excited to see how it goes and how I've got 4 kids in 4 different schools.
Man, that's a lot. That is a lot. Just talking about AI, man, that would be the equivalent of you being in the beginning and the dawn of the internet revolution in 1995. Right. But the difference is that we have an idea that because of the not the internet, but yeah, the internet and how much it exploded, we didn't really understand what was coming. But I think we have a better idea that AI is really going to have a tremendous impact on our lives. And so really being at the forefront of that revolution is really good timing for her, because she's at that age where she's a sponge. She doesn't have to unlearn a whole lot. So that's awesome for her to go and dig into that. So I love it.
Pretty amazing. I mean, to me, it's a great opportunity. So that's pretty much what's exciting for me. I'm looking forward to seeing how that's going to look and how that's going to tend into life. And my father-in-law that lives with me, who does a lot of the driving for the kids, it's not going to be back until like September or middle of October. So I'm like, I looked at my wife the other night and I said, we're going to be doing the school run for the 2 youngest kids. So get ready for that.
Chris and Mary taxi service.
But the good news is that it forces me to be done by like 1:30, 2 o'clock every day. So I can't be more enjoyed about it, given my schedule that I've had in the past. So I'm pretty excited about it.
Oh, that's good. Forced efficiency.
Yes. So I think we just dive right into it today and see what we got going on. I think a couple of things we wanted to talk about, and it's a carryover. We kind of touched on it a little bit last week, but Len, what is your perspective or your thoughts on where we're going? There's been a few things that have a little bit, moved forward a little bit here with New York City mayoral action that's going on there with obviously Mamdani. And I know I always spell it wrong, or not spell it wrong, but say it wrong. I know you're going to say it a lot more, Mamdani.
It's all good.
You're going to say it. But where are you at with that right now? What's your perspective on it? I know there's a lot of information going on it. I just recently was sharing, I think, with you earlier, there was an article by National Review that they did, and then the subject of the article was Mamdani's Millennial Mirage. And I'll let you kind of go into it, because there's a lot of things on the table that he's proposing. There's a lot of different things. I'm curious to know where you're at with that and what your stance is on him and what your thoughts on it.
I have a sneaky suspicion that you and I are probably going to be on opposite sides of the table here, at least for the most part. And the reason why I say that is my son actually lives in New York. And so he's given me perspective because he's there every day. And obviously...
Is he in that district? Is he in?
He is in Brooklyn.
District, but
he's in Brooklyn.
Okay, sorry. He's in a district. That's
so
he's in Brooklyn. He's in a borough.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Oh yeah, he's in one of the boroughs, so he definitely has, a say in what's going to happen in that city. And so his perspective is that a lot of the young people are very excited about him because of the fact that he's bringing ideas that help them. And when you think about the exorbitant cost for rent, when you think about just living expenses and all of those things, those are real issues that people have to deal with. And so where I stand personally is that as I'm learning more, what I try to do is I try to get information from both sides of the aisle. So I want to hear what the left has to say, but I also want to hear what the right has to say. And I want to hear arguments for and against. And as I distill all of it, what I recognize is that Mamdani comes from the perspective that he's looking out for everyday New Yorkers. And so when he was doing a debate with other people, they were saying, hey, what other countries would you go visit? And all to the T said, well, I'll go to Iran. He said, no, I don't want to go to Iran. I want to help New Yorkers. I want to stay right here. And I just think that he's different because when you look at the political climate these days, there's so many people that are just politicians that are just business as usual. When you look at Adams, when you look at Cuomo, when you look at the other candidates that have run for the mayoral position, many of them are looking to toe the party line and connect with AIPAC because you have such a strong political presence with the Jewish community. And so for him, he definitely proclaims to be a democratic socialist. I think that is strategically a misstep, but so far it doesn't seem to have really affected him in the polls because you can put a label on yourself, but then when you hear him talk about the issues, he talks about getting free bus rides. He talks about taxing the rich. He talks about lowering the cost for food and really being able to connect with, grocery stores and having better prices. And he talks about making sure that rent starts to stabilize and all of those things. And when you think about the rich that are in those areas and the different people who would be on the other side of the rent controls, of course, they're not going to like that because the housing costs are exorbitant out there. So I could go on, but I would say about 80% of what he says from a policy perspective, I agree with. I don't like the term democratic socialist, but at the same time, when he talks about his policies, for the most part, I align with them. So I would say the one that I don't align with is just this idea, and I'll wrap up, is that I don't want him to be so specific about taxing the top 1% that they migrate and leave. And so I think that's a potential problem because the top 1% of income earners in New York bring in north of 30% of the revenue. I've seen anywhere from 34 to 44%, depending upon what study you look at. So I'll stop right there. But those are just my 30,000 foot views of Zohran Mamdani.
The biggest thing that I have with the whole thing, and I've never lived in an apartment. I'm fortunate enough to never have. I don't want to say I'm fortunate enough. A lot of people could hear that and take that the wrong way. I've owned an apartment. Back
in our days, I definitely understood what you meant by that, but yes. It takes on a whole different meaning nowadays.
Just in case, that was kind of like a cultural thing, I think, back in the day, where it was just it was like, oh, hey, wait a minute, like if you have a house, you're jamming, right? Like that was the thing, and that is again a lot of the reason why he's popular, because he promotes, I'm going to make housing affordable, right? Because that's a big issue with a lot of people in that younger age group today, millennials, Zennials, is they don't see the ability to own a home as something that is possible for them. But I'm not an expert on rent controls. I don't even claim to even understand what that looks like. But the biggest issue I have with, and it's not even him, it's with the overall optics of the situation and on their side is that the assimilation problem. And I understand you're saying, well, I agree with these things, is but the methods that he goes through or proposals that he has, they're very un-American or uncapitalist. And what I mean by that is that you can't, these are popular things, free buses and rent control that doesn't allow the free market to stabilize it. And then by that matter, we're going to have publicly ran grocery stores. And those are some of the extreme things that we talk about. And redistribution of wealth. We're going to tax the rich. That's been his solution is we're going to go after the wealthiest people. And I know your study, I think the latest study I just saw was like the 1% already pay like 48% of the taxes in there. So they're already paying almost 50%. Let's just call it 50%. And they've already lost like $14 billion in revenue over the last few years because it's going to Florida. Because nobody wants to deal with that. So I get. I don't think anybody in his position or anyone in the opposite position wakes up in the morning with a malice intent, like a murder one intent, like a premeditated intent to actually do harm. But the way that he wants to go about doing it is not ever going to work because we've already seen this. It's already been tested. And I think that your argument is very good in that he's different. Yes, I don't know if he's different, Len. I just think that he's adapted to today's environment and knows how to get attention in today's media. Because he just held a wedding in Uganda with private armed security at a compound with Range Rovers and Mercedes Maybachs and Rolls Royce. And it's a stark contrast to what he promotes because he wants to defund the police in New York City, but yet he's got armed security. And I understand, well, it's Uganda, Chris, it's totally different. That's how it starts, because the reality is that he's not going to live in the places that he defunds. He's going to get specialized security. So while I want to believe that he's different, I don't see that he's different yet. I don't see it. I was on the path of saying, okay, maybe he's different. But when I see how he did his wedding in Uganda and I see how he wants to accomplish what he wants to accomplish, it doesn't look any different to me. It just looks like it's packaged a little differently for me. And I'm like, okay. Yeah, I understand why it's exciting to younger people, because it's an easy solution. Like if I was in school today, I would be so happy about ChatGPT, because I know how happy I was about Google search when I was in my last few years of high school. Google search got me through my senior year of high school. I could just imagine what someone like me would do with ChatGPT right now. I would love it, because I'd be like, homework's done, baby, before I even go from school. I am programming my own agent to do my homework. So sounds a little different, smells a little different. It's still the same thing, man.
No, okay, so a couple of points. I hear what you're saying, but I still fundamentally disagree. Here's why. So the first thing you mentioned, one of the things that you talked about was taxing the rich. And so one thing that he talks about is taxing the people that make over $1 million an additional 2%. And then that'll bring in about $9 billion of revenue. And so I think that when you look at rent controls, I'm not an expert. I'm just a random YouTube guy. So I'm definitely not proclaiming to be an expert. But this is what I do know. I do know my son pays $5,000 a month for an apartment that is about 1,400 square feet. So it's 2 stories, and by New York City's account, it's a pretty nice size. But $5,000 a month, bro, that's a bit exorbitant. That's a lot of money. And so when you look at, and I've been to his place, this is the 3rd place he's been. So typically he'll stay on a lease for about a year. And the neighborhoods that he stays in, they're nice neighborhoods, but back in the 90s, that was the hood. Like he was in, places where, you could walk outside and get shot. But with, gentrification, they've changed the neighborhood structures and things like that. Rents have gone up significantly. So what's happening is that any country that has a middle class that's spending more than 30% of their income on housing costs, that's where tensions begin to rise, and the propensity moves towards tension and conflict. And that's what's happening in New York when you have the exorbitant prices for food, for housing, for transportation. He's addressing those issues specifically with specific solutions. And so to address the issue with weddings, I've been to Africa, and one thing that I can tell you, having gone to multiple countries there, $1 here goes about 10 to 12 times further out there, depending upon the country you go to. And so let's say, for example, when you decided to plan for a wedding here, if you decided, you're going to splurge, you're going to spend money, you're going to, make sure that it's a day that's unforgettable. And so let's say you and your wife decided to spend $25,000 on a wedding out here. And for me, I personally wouldn't spend that kind of money because I'm a minimalist. I'm very simple. Anybody who knows me would say there's no way Dr. Cooper is spending $25,000 on a wedding. Now, considering the fact that I've been married many, many years, I don't even know. I would imagine $25,000 is about an average price. Would you agree with that?
I would say that's reasonable. Yeah, I would say that's reasonable.
So the equivalent of that, let's just assume that's reasonable. That's a $250,000 worth of a wedding out there. So it's going to buy you a whole lot more. Now, I'm saying, I want to be very clear. I personally think that level of opulence and extravagance over a wedding ceremony is a bit much, but I just want to put that into perspective. So again, lastly, what I'll say is that when you talk about groceries, I'm telling you, in New York City, the prices are about 20 to 30% higher for everything. Now it's the same food that's being brought from other places. Why is it so much more expensive? I just think that the cost out there is way too high. And I think the people who have the ability to increase prices because of everything else, that's a problem. Lastly, I disagree with his thoughts about a $30 an hour minimum wage, because all of that is ridiculous. Because, for example, here in California, it's a $20 an hour minimum wage, right? Well, the problem is that all that does is it creates a tax for all of the other consumers, because if a McDonald's worker or a Subway worker is making $20 an hour, instead of that burger being $3.59, now it's going to be $4.99, $5.49, $6.29. And all they do is they pass the cost to the consumer. So this idea of increasing the minimum wage in that specific area, when you're talking about a low skill position, that part I definitely disagree with.
Well, I think that for me, the issue again is that, okay, I understand the difference in currency, and I understand, okay, this is this, and I understand the medium, right? But that still projects to me the thought process and the level of, this is normal for me, right? And you're going to be in the public eye. So why would you even allow somebody to even have leverage over you in that regard? Because again, when you see something like that, all you have to do is crack open a history book and go, oh, wait a minute, that's what Stalin did. Oh, wait a minute, that's what Chairman Mao did. Oh, wait a minute.
That's valid.
That's what Fidel Castro did. So you start, for me anyways, and that's why history is so important. For me anyways, I see that and I go, oh, I've seen that before. That looks just like A, B, C, X, Y, Z. So I it's had a hard time connecting those dots. Additionally, let's say he does become mayor. He ain't gonna take the same subway that Susie and Johnny are gonna get mugged on to go to their government-run grocery store where everything's out of stock.
Now the subways are safe, Chris.
Sorry for your safety. Here's what I can say, right? All right. Hey, you know what? I know the subways are safe because, right? I know they were safe when I rode there in the 90s when Giuliani was mayor. But not after that. Not after that.
Subways are still safe, man. But keep going, though.
Here's what I can say. This is why the United States is so fundamentally important and so amazing as an opportunity just to be born in the United States and have an opportunity to legally come to the United States and immigrate the right way and come to the United States with the attitude of, I'm coming to this country to enhance my life, but to be a good citizen and enhance the country around me at the same time, right? That's the attitude that we're looking for. That's the attitude that we should have, right? So at the same time, here's why the United States is so great. I'm originally from Southern California, moved to Texas 3.5 years ago, almost 4 years ago now. And what I can tell you is that the same food is the same here as it is in California, and it's the same apartment as over there. But what I can tell you is, and I know location. Yeah, but Chris, this is, this part of Texas where, yeah. But at the same time, I can get a 1,500 square foot, 1-bedroom apartment with a dining room, living room, porch, first floor, granite countertops, laundry room built into it. Because I had one last summer. I got it from my mom. For $1,400 a month with a dog, with dog access, with a garage in North Houston in a place called the Woodlands in Texas. How is it that I can get that here, but I can't get it in New York? How is it that, or California for that matter, but then how is it that I can go to the grocery store and my grocery bill and by the way, I can go to Whole Foods here. I couldn't go to Whole Foods in California. I can go to Whole Foods here. I shop exclusively at Whole Foods, Costco, and Sam's Club. And I buy only organic, non-GMO. I could do that here in Texas. I couldn't do that in California. I couldn't even do that in New York. And again, New York and California, right? New York, California. I can actually even do that still in some other states. I could do it in Florida. I could do it in the Carolinas. I could do it in Tennessee. So what makes those areas different from New York and California that there's they figured out how to make housing affordable, and they figured out how to make groceries affordable. And by the way, all these things in Texas, where I live, are still more expensive than they were pre-COVID or even during those times, right? Because obviously everyone's feeling that pinch with inflation and all those things, supply chain issues. It's going to take time for that to adjust, right? It's not going to happen like that. But even during all of that, gas is $2.49 a gallon here at an expensive gas station. How did we figure it out? And how do they figure it out here and they can't figure it out there? And the solution is, well, we need government to the rescue. I just don't get it. The problem, I think, is that too many of these left-leaning guys, and even some of these right-leaning guys now, they purposely make problems so that they have jobs. And then they don't even go to the same places that they want us to go to. So that, to me, is the issue. It's like, wait a minute, Texas, Florida, all these places figure out how to make things affordable for people. Even during the crazy times that we live in right now, how come these places can't make it affordable? How come Madami can't figure out how to make it affordable without taking more money from the people who, yes, I may know they're making over $1 million, but these are the guys that own the businesses and the companies that are employing people. These are the small to medium-sized business owners that are making that $1 million because they decided. And minimum wage, we could talk about that on a different topic. Minimum wage is that bar, Len, that goes, hey, don't hang out here too long. You're better than this, but this is your step to get to the next level. And who knows, maybe, well, Chris, you have ambition, and Chris, you were lucky. No, I wasn't lucky. I had my own set of cards where I had to get rid of shoes that talked when I walked and shoelaces as a belt growing up. You know, I had to get out of that. And everyone else has to do that too. So I don't know. To me, it just smells like he's going to repeat the same old process and live a life of enrichment and a life of fancy public servitude and sit in the highest, most opulent, most disgustingly lavish opportunities and cars and buildings and places and events and charities and fundraisers that he will ever in his life ever get to experience. That even me and you, as a 7-figure earner, would probably never even experience on a daily basis. He will experience that. He will experience that because he will be the mayor of New York City potentially, but just because he holds that title. It's just, to me, it's just out of BS, man.
Well, I don't know what he'll do because he's probably going to win the mayoral race. So
100% he's winning.
Okay, no so it definitely remains to be seen because, of course, when people get into positions of power, they do things differently than they thought they were going to do prior to. When we talked last week, we talked about Pam Bondi, we talked about Kash Patel and all of this release of the Epstein files. And then when they get in the position of power and they get access to information, things start to change. So I think that what he's going to do when he gets into office definitely remains to be seen. One of the things that you asked about before was why does California cost so much and why does New York cost so much? And I think my brethren on the right or, Republican leaning would say, oh, those are left states. And that's the reason why, because of big government and so on and so forth. I think there's much more of a practical reason. And I think part of it is like, if you take a look at New York, if you look at the number of people per square mile, it's significantly higher than just about any other state. And so you have this whole economic situation of supply and demand. New York is the financial capital of the world. So many people desire to live in New York. You can go to Europe in 5 hours. So from that standpoint, from doing commerce, it's centrally located.
So that's an important point. That's an important point. You just said, okay, that's an important point that I think we need to talk about there then.
Yeah.
And that goes back to the core problem I have, which is assimilation. I'm okay with you being a leader here. I don't have a problem with that, right? Mm-hmm. Do it. You earned it, right? The rules say you can, right? But again, you said it's the financial capital of the world. It's a highly desired place. Okay, so then the free market dictates that it's more expensive to live there just because it's desired to live there. So that's where I have a problem. It's like everyone wants to be there, then the price naturally becomes more expensive. Great, then let it be expensive. Okay. Because the free market's demanding that. Again, we're going to come in here and again, why this becomes so grossly over proportion and blown out of proportion is because we're tinkering with something that naturally works. And when you tinker with stuff that naturally works, that's when you have the problem. You're messing with a natural system of economics. It's free market supply and demand. If a lot of people want it, then that means the price goes up in rent. But then a hero needs to come in and we need rent control to bring these rents down. But you're killing the system that made the rents popular. Therefore, because yes, you are right, Lynn. They are so much money in California, but that would also, in my mind, say, well, then there's more resource. Then that means we shouldn't be in a bind. If there's more resource, we should actually have excess.
I think when you take a look at California, on the other end is California is a desirable place because you have the weather that's great. You have just so much opportunity that's here because you don't have the same level of population density. You've got the oceans, you've got the mountains. And so it's attractive for businesses. And so I definitely understand why costs tend to go up. I think what happens, though, is that higher costs have a tendency to become an argument for people to use as a justification for saying it's a democratically run state. And because of that, it's left leaning. And because of that, the government comes in. I think it's a lot more nuanced than that. And I think what ends up happening is, to your point, I don't think there's a such thing as a purely capitalistic system. So when you look at the United States, you do have some socialistic elements that are a part of it. So really, the United States, from an economic standpoint, is a capitalistic, socialistic blend as an economy. So when you have people who are older, when you have people who need a safety net, when you have systems where you have sewers and bridges and infrastructure, the collective pay for those structures to be in place. And so if you look at just a purely capitalistic system, there's no such thing. You don't have it. And we're the closest to a purely capitalistic system because here in the United States, anywhere from 2 to 6% of unemployment is considered optimal. And so there's no system in which 0% unemployment is realistic. And so those people that are on the far left would argue, well, any system where you have any level of unemployment is a problem. And that's the reason why you need socialism and communism to rule, to control the means of production so that everybody can work and all of those things. I agree with you that there should be free markets, that there should be systems that control prices and let competition and supply and demand control prices. So I think, though, there's always other support systems that come in to move the levers. For example, the United States, we were talking offline and we were talking about the Federal Reserve. The Federal Reserve has Jerome Powell and his group of appointees that help move the levers of the interest rates. And so based on increasing the interest rates, then that cools down spending. If you lower the interest rates, that warms up spending. And so because human nature does things sometimes that's contrary to its best interest, sometimes we have to have other levers, systems, government processes that come in to provide some balance to help us save ourselves, if you will.
I think that the biggest problem is, and I'd be curious to do a study on it, is I really don't think there's a problem in America to provide for everybody. And I think America has so much resource and so much productive value that I honestly really think America could be just like UAE, where, you know, citizens of the UAE, and obviously the numbers are different and would skew a lot differently. And this is a wild thing, but if you look at how they've done that, it's a profit share, right? I mean, everyone there naturally gets income from the oil and the energy that's produced in that country. There's so much economic production in America, but it's been stifled the last 20, 30 years because of trade in foreign countries and how that works and how things have been manipulated. Look, in traveling all over the world and being to a lot of different countries, and especially lately, I've traveled to a lot of different places, I don't ever see anyone else trying to emulate. I don't see a lot of things in America try to emulate outside of America, but what I always seem to see where I go to countries, regardless of the world, I always seem to see other countries trying to emulate stuff that America does or emulating American things, right? And that always shocks me because I'm like, you don't really see that anywhere else. You don't really, yes, you go, oh, look, that's a European thing happening here in America. That's a trend that's happening in China is happening here in America, or vice versa, or whatever. But what you do see is when you go to other countries, you go, oh, they're trying to do it like America. But and then in this BS where people come with, oh, these cities are so advanced in all these other countries. Yeah, we've been doing this for 150 years, guys. We've been doing this since the late 1800s, early 1900s. We've been building skyscrapers, Where do you think this started from? Where this started here? Where do you think we got all these ideas from? So I don't think that we have an issue where we need to balance it. I think we just need to make sure that bad actors don't emerge. I think that when you look at America and you look at capitalism and you look at, and obviously pure capitalism no pure system of anything works. But I think when you allow people to produce goods and you allow people to consume and you allow things that are popular to be popular and things that aren't popular to go away, I think that's just a more natural way to do it. And when you start manipulating and tinkering with things, that's when it starts to get crazy. And again, I mean, that's a good way to segue into Jerome Powell, because we were going to talk about that because, I mean, who knows now? I mean, it was very contentious. Maybe he's going to get fired, but now it's almost like Trump is getting his way because he's hinted, Jerome, and you see news media now saying, he's going to cut rates. And I understand, why they don't want to cut rates, but I also at the same time understand why they want to cut rates. I think at this point, Trump just got his highest approval rating since March, I think today or yesterday or something to that effect, right? So the approval ratings went back up. The economy's going in the right direction. The stock market's up. I'm actually in favor of not lowering the rate just yet. I think we should probably just keep the rates where they're at right now, because if I didn't see things stabilizing a little bit and plateauing and not going up and trending a little bit down in certain things and feeling the way it is just from my perspective as well, I would say cool. Just let it ride right now. I'm actually okay with that, Len. And I would probably, most people say cut it, right? Because you want to spur economic activity. But I think that just lowering it would create too much of a shock, and there'd be too many. I don't know. The challenge, I think, is there's too many people right now frothing for that to happen. And I think that you're going to get a lot of abuse capitalism versus kind of let's let it slowly. You know what I mean? Just like, because we went too extreme with inflation, and that's why it bubbled up like that, plus the COVID happening and all these perfect storms with that, right? But at the same time, I think if we go too far with letting the leash off, we're going to get this overabundance. And then again, that's the nuance you have to play, because what are other countries doing to spur economic activity, to create an economic advantage or prowess over America? Because that's really what it all is who wants to be the boss. So, yeah, I'm in favor of keeping rates the way they are. Look, for all intents and purposes, I know Jerome Powell. Look, Trump appointed Jerome Powell. I don't like the Federal Reserve. I'm for getting rid of it. I understand there's a lot of things going on, but I think Jerome Powell has actually done a pretty good job. I don't think he's done a bad job. I don't think he has. I think the shit that he's had to deal with, I think he's done a pretty good job.
Yeah. So another nuanced conversation, because when you take a look at Jerome Powell and then you take a look at the role of the Federal Reserve, there's a lot of history that goes into all of that. When you look at the formation of it back in 1913, you have a group of people that go to Jekyll Island to come together to figure out how this whole fiat currency is going to work. And every fiat currency throughout the history of time has always inflated out of control in hyperinflation. And so we see the value of the dollar since that time has eroded 95%. And so when you look at the fact that our grandparents and great grandparents could buy a house for $15,000, $20,000, $25,000, and now the average median home price is hundreds of thousands of dollars, depending upon what state you go to, we know that eventually the dollar is going to go away, in terms of it being the world's go-to currency and all of those things. So that's one thing. Now, when you talk about interest rates in particular, I agree with you. I think that keeping the interest rates the same right now is important because there's still a lot of unknown. As you know, Trump was in Europe and he talked about the tariffs, and before it was going to be at 30%, and now he's decided to reduce it to 15%, which is good, but relative to where it was higher. It's higher than it has been. So what that means is the BMWs we import, the Volvos we import, the German goods, the Japanese, the English goods that come over here, all of it's going to be more expensive. So that costs because you have the manufacturers, you've got the exporters.
Don't you see that as a plus though? Because what the free market's going to do is and here's the thing: what the free market's going to do is it's going to encourage other people to produce stuff in America again, or to do things in America again, or change things, right? You know what's funny? Look, I drive a Mercedes, and I know you drive a Mercedes yourself too. Mm-hmm. And I remember in the early 2000s, like 2003, 2004, I remember even 06, 08, I remember working and going, damn, I want a Mercedes so bad. And I remember the prices have inflated crazy, right? And those were just normal, I guess, market economic cycles because money was very prevalent. And you see that again today. Before even the tariffs, an S-Class, fully loaded S-Class. I bought my S-Class in 2022. It was $148,000. For the same type of configured S-Class today, it's $178,000. And that's before tariffs go into effect.
Right, exactly.
So what caused that? Inflation caused it to go up. So to me, I'm not really afraid of tariffs from European BMWs or Mercedes or any of that stuff, because I think it's going to get offset when it comes over here with the savings and the income that America's going to get from getting that additional tariffs and savings, because it's going to come somewhere else. You're going to get a break somewhere else. It's no different than an EV tax credit right now. All these people getting all these money to buy EVs, and they're getting this credit, this inflated credit because they have tax EVs. I don't know. I think, but here is a good thing though, Len, and I think you can't argue with this. They did make a deal on tariffs. Mm-hmm. We didn't have any of that to begin with. That's more revenue for the country. So while we might pay it, I don't know. I think it's going to swap. It'll be interesting to see the numbers on that.
Okay, so it's going to be interesting to see where that revenue goes. One, two, your argument about increasing tariffs, which causes the cost of goods and services that are imported to rise, therefore will increase manufacturing. I think that argument 30 years ago definitely would have been applicable because manufacturing was more of a thing. But now that we're in the information age and the technology age, I don't know to what degree manufacturing is going to be a big issue anymore, because, when you look at the cost of labor, when you look at the cost of materials, we're in such a global economy now, and it's just much more efficient to have products and services produced in other places and shipped over here as opposed to being produced here. For example, think about this. How much would an Apple phone cost if it was completely manufactured here in the United States? Engineered, manufactured, produced, all the labor and all that stuff here. It's not even practical, but how much do you think it would cost?
I don't think Apple will be valued as much.
Of course not. There's no possible way.
Here's the reason why. Because Apple doesn't. I forget the number it was, but it was maybe on an iPhone 15. It was a long time ago. It's like a 100 to 1 cost ratio. It's like Apple costs like $50 or something crazy number to make that iPhone in China, right? And then they're charging $800, $900 over here. I think at that point, what you would see, and that's where good stewardship comes in, I think is where you should look at that and go, okay, we're going to allow Apple to expatriate all this money to China, right? And we're going to allow Apple to train all these people in China. All this knowledge is going to go over this. All this IP is going to go over this. We're going to train their workforce. We're going to have a private American company train their workforce, do all these things, and then tax shelter all that money over there. Whereas we should have just said, look, let's invest in Apple and encourage them to build the iPhone here in America and make way for them to do it. And as a result, maybe the iPhone's not going to be as expensive as it was, and maybe Apple won't be as worth as much as it is. TSMC has been trying to build a semiconductor plant in Arizona that would build 7% of the chips that America needs, and they can't do it because of environmental legislation. How sad is that? Do you think China cares about environmental legislation to build chip factories? Absolutely not. And furthermore, I do think manufacturing is alive and well. I think it's the next boom in America again. And I don't think it's going to be in the form of what we thought it was. And I think that it's going to be in the form of manufacturing advanced AI, advanced humanoid, advanced biometrics, advanced animatronics, all of that stuff, because that's the future. And if we don't figure out how to build semiconductors, chips, AI, robotics in America, that's where we're going to get killed.
I think you killed your own argument then, because I agree with you about that. Okay. Because in AI, all the manufacturing that you just talked about in terms of artificial intelligence isn't going to put a roof over my head. It's not going to put transportation in my garage. It's not going to put clothes on my back. And if we go and rely on America to provide all of those goods and services, the costs of pants in America will be $200 to $500. The cost of a shirt will be $20 to $80. And so just because the cost of so minimum wage right now is headed to $20 an hour. So imagine all of that manufacturing being done here. So how do you think the cost will still be able to be low?
I think that everyone has to understand that we're in the middle of a paradigm shift right now. What once was, look, we can't expect one aspect or one area of the world to change and all the other areas to change. What do I mean by that? Well, for example, we can look up and curate information off a chatbot and have an AI agent read our emails and do all that stuff, right? We can do that, right? But at the same time, what's going to happen is things are going to change. So yeah, jeans manufacturing, what do you mean? I have 4 humanoid robots sewing and making those jeans now instead of how we're doing it in a sweatshop in Uganda or China or Pakistan. The labor cost is, look, the labor market is the biggest industry in the world. That's about to be replaced by AI humanoids. That's about to be replaced by animatronic or a humanoid. Because think about it. All different industries and all different types of we don't even know that different industries are going to be born as a result of this, because things that humans used to do are no longer going to be done anymore.
And you just killed your argument again, because the main reason why they wanted to bring manufacturing back to the U.S. was to create more jobs. And so now, but I think I know where you're going with this. So go ahead.
So as a result, you won't see $20 or $80 pairs of jeans made in America. They're going to be made in America because what you're going to see is the work that costs so much, the hard material generation. I don't see us putting humanoids to work to replace skilled labor that most humans can do. I think that we'll find a balance. If government finds a way to work with commerce in a way to make that transition easy and safe for the good of us as a species, right? Because we're in that point right now. I think that when government responsibly works with it in a checks and balances process, because corporate greed, I know it can look at it and go, wait a minute, I can automate my workforce 100%. But then someone from government has to look at that and go, yes, but we have to change it. But the problem is that the intellectuals and the people in government just come over this and go, wait a minute, and kill the whole thing. Or they let it go for a little bit and they go, ooh, this is making so much money. Let's figure out how to regulate it and pad our pockets. The reality here is that we have to allow this to work in a free marketability and allow the workforce to change. And people are going to be so much more happy if we start employing this stuff in the stuff that cheapens the supply chain. So if we look at the supply chain and go, where's the supply chain so expensive? And we can employ AI and we can employ humanoid and employ manufacturing and allow America to be at the forefront in that birth, I don't think we have a problem in America, because we'll be able to pinpoint that. You just can't tell me that we're not smart enough to pinpoint why where in the supply chain creates this so expensive. And right now the excuse is always, oh, American labor is so expensive. Why? Because we demand such a high standard of living in America. Well, then how do we fix it? Oh, we just keep taxing people that want to go out and work harder than the next person? I just don't see that as a solution. I see the solution is that everybody needs to figure out how to make it work for themselves. So I did, you did.
Yeah, I think though that, okay, so I want to address the topic of labor, because you talked about the fact that humanoids could go and replace labor fairly quickly. Now, when you look at, let's just take a look at your scenario where we start focusing on AI manufacturing and creating humanoid bots to become the labor that we had before, because right now it's shipped offshore. Okay, so let's say we bring that back here to the United States. Where in that transition does the labor come from? How does the labor force get transformed? Because where I thought you were going was to talk about educating the citizenry here in the United States to become educated in where the tide is going. You know, when a person is surfing, they don't look where the wave is. They look where the wave is coming so they can ride the wave and catch it the right way. So I think to help you with your argument, if I were you arguing on your side, I would say, okay, well, we need to make sure that we train the population to learn how to run the bots, to learn how to, build the manufacturing facilities. And then also, what are the types of production they're creating? How can we integrate humans and the labor force into that process? And so that way we can continue to have economic production increase here in the United States. Because if we don't do that, prices of goods and services are going to be way too high.
Look, it'll be so, it could be so hybridized that way so that you're not putting people out of work, because at the ultimate time, ultimately someone has to train that, right? But ultimately someone's just working with that AI, right? So for example, let's say you're a contractor, right? And you specialize in demolition. Well, you're going to have a crew of bots that specialize in certain things that you don't want your human people doing, and they're going to do that. And because the cost metrics are so much cheaper now, because this labor bot can do this stuff, the margin gets bigger, and now everyone can slice that pie around a little bit more, right? Right. So all the costs are going to go down, which is going to allow people to live. You're going to have the ability to create that utopia that liberals think about all the time, because there's going to be so much abundance produced by the cheap labor that we have. Isn't that how they do it in China right now?
Where does the labor go? But they put because, my son's been to China and he has a firsthand eyewitness account of how things are significantly different there. For example, out here in the suburbs, we have street sweepers, and I've seen them in big urban cities as well. And so they have people sweeping the streets because they're putting large numbers of people to work. If you think about their population is well over 1 billion people. So all of those people have to work. Here in the United States, our population is significantly smaller. So when you change the unit of production to make it more mechanical, then you need fewer workers per unit of output because it's being more efficient. So where do all of those people going to college, graduating from high school, because we're still, we're at about 350 million people, and our population growth has started to stabilize. When I say stabilize relative to where it was in the previous generation, it isn't growing as fast, but you still have large numbers of people that need to have jobs. They need to find ways to be productive. And so if machines are replacing that, and again, I'm not opposed to progress. I'm not opposed to AI or anything like that. I just am concerned about how the common everyday person is going to survive. And I think those are challenges that we really need to work on solving, because I think it's a problem worth solving in the name of progress. Just like people transitioning from horses to cars, they wanted better horses as opposed to cars. And turns out the car was a pretty good idea. So I'm not that guy saying that we should not have increased activity as it relates to technology and AI. I just think that we need to be responsible of how we focus on labor.
I just think that I don't think it's going to be a problem. And here's why. How many people do you think were hysterical during the Industrial Revolution? Oh my God. You went from an agrarian culture and society for the most part everywhere, especially in America, to a completely industrialized and mechanized. What do you think? What's going to happen to the blacksmith? He's not going to be able to smith shoehorns anymore, right? For horses. And what's going to happen to the horse and the guy that makes the wheels for the wagon wheel? Well, what's going to happen? He's going to be out of a job. How's the farmer going to survive? I think that what happens is that that's a lazy way of us not using our imagination to think. And it's also a way for us to be so doom and gloom to think that we're not going to figure out other things to do. We don't think other emerging markets that we have no. Look, here's the thing: did we have any idea what industries would spawn as a result of the internet in 1993, 1994? Did we have any idea that this is how the internet would look at this point? I bet you there are some people that went back and went, dude, one day this is going to happen, right? I bet you on an episode of The Simpsons, it had it on there, right?
I think they add those episodes in later on just to look right. Who would know? They
go back and they do it. But my point is that every time Like, for example, when email came out, oh, the fax machine is dead. Bro, people still fax things. There's still a requirement to fax stuff for a lot of different things. Mm-hmm. I just think that when the computer came out, oh my God, you won't need secretaries anymore, right? What about when Apple launched the iPad? Oh, the computer's dead, the laptop's dead, right? I just think that what happens is that we get this hysteria, and certain people latch onto this hysteria that, oh my God, AI is going to replace everybody. No, it's not. What AI is going to do is it's going to allow us to realize that we're going to become very efficient in a lot of things, and that's going to open the door for us to be creative, to create new industries. Now, what will happen is that those industries or those sectors that are impacted, they're going to be pain there. But that is the natural way of the universe. Nature is painful. Evolution is painful. So I think when we start to try to tinker with that and we start to try to mess with that, that's where it starts to get very ugly and starts to get very muddy. I don't think it's going to be a problem. Now, what I do think in my mind, and this is obviously the importance for a lot of people listening, is I've been saying this for 3 or 4 years now, and I wish I was saying it 10 years ago, I'm extremely paranoid about getting ahead of that curve and being in a point where I can get to a point where I'm not really caring what industry I'm in. I'm just investing in industries that are moving and are trending. Because for me, I already saw it. I saw the writing on the wall. I said, this is going to be huge. I want to be in front of it instead of behind it. And I know there was a consensus. Look, I was in my early 20s during when Netflix, Apple, Tesla, NVIDIA, all that stuff was just this was the next hot thing and all. Well, if I would have got ahead of that, I would have been a millionaire. I would have been a billionaire today, right? I would have been a millionaire 500 or 700 times over, but I'm not, because I was young and I was dumb and I didn't get ahead of it. But today I'm like, wait a minute, I see the trend. I want to get ahead of the trend. Mm-hmm. Now, for me, there's another 10,000 people that don't care to know the trend, don't want to know the trend, and are not even in a position for me to even think about being in that trend because they're stuck worrying about minimum wage. That is criminal. That is a disservice.
Yeah, I agree.
That is a disservice.
I agree. And I think your point is well taken as it relates to AI and just the evolution of economies, because as humans, we adapt, we adjust, and we make just differences and transitions. Because I think, to your point, I think what COVID did is it increased our access to technology by at least 5 years. And the reason why is because we had to adjust. We had to adjust the way we connected. And so because of that, Zoom and Netflix and video conferencing and WebEx and all of those other platforms really exploded because of necessity created that. And to your point, I agree that we need to make sure, for those of you that are watching, especially if you are tuning in, our goal is to not try to be pundits that talk about just things that we don't know about. We want to talk about just our experiences. So as a result of that, we've been around the block enough to know that AI is a trend that you need to be aware of. You need to make sure that you're learning everything about it. You need to make sure that even if people aren't talking about specific things in your circle, you need to find circles that are. And so I think having these types of conversations where we don't always agree, it's always productive because we give each other perspective. And I think, to Chris's point, we're going to become a society that's going to be transformed like no other time in our history. We're going to be transformed by AI because change is happening at a much more rapid pace. So when you went from the agrarian society going to the Industrial Revolution, change took time because of efficiencies. But now with technology and machine learning and the quickness in which information changes. If you go back 2 years ago and you look at text to video, the quality was horrendous. It was unwatchable. But now when you look at it, there's cinematic quality types of movies. And that's one of the reasons why in our company, we're looking at AI as a way to increase our brand presence. We're looking at AI to increase the user experience when they're interacting with our brand. And we know that AI is on the forefront of that. And so even though for me, I'm a little bit older, I still understand that this is important, and I'm certainly not going to be left behind. So I definitely see your point as it relates to making adjustments, and I think that's necessary. So
I'm very excited about it. Look, I've already implemented a lot of that stuff and a lot of the business operation stuff, administrative stuff that we do, and it's made it so much more efficient. And I'm just like, I can't even believe, it's just, we haven't even really even scratched the surface of what this stuff is and how it's going to look and what it's going to do.
Man, I've really enjoyed our conversations, man. We talked about quite a few topics today. So I hope that people in the audience got some value from it. And man, so thanks for taking the time with me, Chris. I appreciate it.
Always love chatting with you. I can't believe it's almost been an hour, it's almost been 2 hours, right? Yeah, look, if you enjoyed this content or you enjoyed this conversation, tell somebody about it, share it with somebody. And if you have something to say about it, you want to comment, we want to engage with you as well. Drop a comment in there. We're happy to talk with you guys. I know not everybody's going to agree, but that's what it's here for. That's what makes America great, is the fact that we can have a conversation, a dialogue, and at the end of it, we can still be friends, still be neighbors, still work together, still make money and prosper together. So again, we're never above you, never below you. We're always next to you. We appreciate everybody tuning in today. Len, I appreciate your time. As always, it's always moving fast, and I'll see you on the next one. Have a great rest of your day today. I'm going to go eat and do some birthday festivities today, and I appreciate you always as a friend and as a mentor.
Absolutely. And again, man, happy birthday. Many more to you, brother.
Have a great one.
All right, you
too. My best. Take care.
All right.
Conversation has given you clarity on your next steps. Please share this episode with someone who's walking the same path. Don't forget to like and subscribe so you won't miss future episodes. And remember, planning ahead isn't just prudent, it's an act of care. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time on The Family Office.